Welcome to the Professional Women's Wellness Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Peggy Gleason, creator of the Mindful Eating Approach, where I help professional women and business owners with a tailored path to weight loss and self-confidence without the stress of restrictive diets, time-consuming exercise regimes, or medications. I help you transform your eating habits to enhance all areas of your wellness, and we always offer inspiration, motivation, and education with amazing gifts. Yes. And today I am honored to introduce our next guest, Patrice Porter, also known as the Gardening Grandma, master cultivator, sowing seeds of life skills in future generations. She not only teaches the art of growing fresh and nourishing foods, but also tends to the growth of resilient families as a dedicated parent support coach. She's authored a book series, Bringing Out the Potential of Children, and she also is a co-author of the #1 best-selling book, No Problem Parenting, Raising Your Kiddos with More Confidence and Less Fear, and international #1 best-selling book, The Parenting Owner's Manual, the A to Z's to raising a happy, healthy family from 34 experts around the world. Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. You're really a busy author for sure, but I'm so privileged to have you here and welcome.
Well, I'm happy to be here and sharing with your audience there I'm always into promoting wellness and well-being, and having been a quite a health conscious person most of my life, I like to see that for others too. And, especially like when I became a mother, that idea of maintaining your health and keeping care of yourself when you've got dependents, and they're dependent on you. If you aren't there to take care of them, they don't thrive. So it's and part of that was that nutritious food and making sure that my family's got nutritious foods and we're active, the fresh air, all that. But the food, like, especially when you've got a young family, and I would go to the grocery stores, and it was so hard to find unadulterated foods. Like I was,
and it's worse now.
oh,
it's worse now. Absolutely.
Even like a tea, I wanted to go get some specialty teas. And I didn't want these natural flavors and all this.
Right. Yeah.
Real flavors of the real food. And so that's why I'm so keen on gardening and growing your own.
Well, it gives you more control, right? Gives you more control over what you're putting in your body. I wanted to ask you, tell me a little bit about the backstory behind like growing up, and what brought you to, I know having children was your catalyst to making sure they're taken care of, but tell me more about the gardening and all the backstory growing up and how you got into this.
Okay, so with the gardening, I've always had a garden of some sort, and it really wanting that good food and just being really health conscious. So anything to do with gardening, I would pick up. The old timers, I would always try to pick their brains for how did you grow that, or how did you do that, or any courses or anything, and reading books, and I just was soaking in all this knowledge and of course applying it, and for in my gardening and growing, and then so I became that go-to person for gardening. But it was really when I started working with the kids, and it was called the Play and Exploration Program, which is a real child-centered education, and you're you're working on, well, for me, working with the kids, like you can see that potential in the kids and nurture it, and you get to watch them blossom. And so we would try to pick up on their different interests and or expose them to new things to create an interest. And to me, it was like opening new worlds to the kids. And I especially loved opening that world of gardening to them. And so I had first got into, like we did lots of projects with the kids in the program there. But also at that time I was working with Dr. Jeffrey Lant, and he's a renowned author and educator, and he was one of the first to do the satellite conferences he worked at 40 different universities, but he had really wanted to do an online writing course. So I worked with him, and we built that course, but it really instilled in me like the love of the medium of books for sharing your knowledge and expertise.
Yes.
And I wanted to share that. That's where that book series, Bringing Out the Potential of Children, because I was in that position where I was working with the kids and, seeing it. And so I started off working, writing the book series, and there's Bringing Out the Potential of Kids Writers, Gardeners, and Cooks and Chefs. And then I fell into I really enjoyed courses for exchanging your expertise in that. And so I developed the Dirt Gardening for Kids course so I could reach more kids. And that's where the gardening grandma came in, because working with the kids, like there would be lots of kids didn't have that grandma figure. And with gardening, it was kind of like, I call it the old time survival skill, and it's almost like a lost skill. And yet it's becoming so much more important nowadays, like with the cost of living and the availability of food, and to give that life skill to the kids.
Yeah. And what do you do about, because I know with teaching gardening, I know you live in Canada, in a far off land in Canada, from what you've told me. It's like somewhere out there.
Right in the boreal forest in a pine.
There it is. And oh my gosh, how exciting. But now when you're teaching kids that are really more urban, and there's buildings, there's no place to, how do you go about getting them excited about that?
Well, the first question I ever asked when I starting to work with kids and they want to garden or to pique that interest in gardening, the first question I always ask is, what type of garden would you like to have? And I give them an examples, like I like a garden that's overflowing with garden goodies. My granddaughter, she likes a fairy garden, so she can have lots of adventures in there with the forest of thyme and the edible flowers and
oh my goodness.
And my grandniece, she wanted a Halloween garden, and so I had to put on my thinking cap for that one. And it was, there's
pumpkins.
I call them ghost pumpkins, but they're like white skinned pumpkins, and they look like ghosts in the pumpkin patch.
Oh, wow.
She said, I want sweets. And I had a stevia plant, which is actually 10 times sweeter than sugar.
Yes.
So we made some cuttings of that. She had her sweets. We put in like the Halloween themed colors of black and orange. And she had her Halloween garden. Another boy, he wanted a indoor tree garden. And I thought for a bit, bonsai gardening. So it's really, being creative, and you want it for the kids to be a place where they're going to enjoy spending their time in, and that growing the things they want to grow, that they're going to be willing to put that effort in to grow, because it is a commitment, with
Yeah, it is.
and
It's a commitment, just like when somebody wants a puppy. Well, that's a commitment. You're going to have to walk the puppy. You're going to have to feed the puppy. And it sounds to me like the same kind of thought process is, this is a garden. This is what's going to feed you. You have to take care of it. You have to feed it. You have to water it, blah, blah, blah. But
I joke
it's
around
interesting.
there with that you brought up with the puppies, and I joke around like taking care of plants is kind of a nice first step, before you have kids. Start taking care of some plants, know what that is, to have those living things depend on you. Then you get your puppies and your pets. That's a little bit more, if you don't take care of your puppies, that's pretty dramatic.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's kind of a build up. Then you're ready to nurture your children.
Yeah. So what do you do about, like, when you're doing the gardening, and this goes back to also depending on where you live, what's the most important thing we have to know about the type of soil we need to use? Because that, I think, is always an issue with people. Like, well, do you just use potting soil? What do you do if you're going to have an indoor garden or an outside garden? What do I need to know of how to take care of the soil?
Well, one thing before we get into the soil, there's a one point, know your climate.
Ah, there we go. That's the answer right there. Number one, know your climate.
Know your climate. So what will grow in your climate, and when to plant, and what plants to plant when. And there is a good tool, the World Weather online.org. I've got that. It's World Weather Online. See,
Okay.
it was a .org. But that you can look up your locale, and it'll give you your average temperatures throughout the year, and then you can gauge whether to plant and if like your cool weather plants and your warm weather plants.
Wow.
And then there's a sweet spot. But so that's always the first thing, is like, get to know your climate, and your soil, of course, is the most important thing. That's your foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always building up the soil. Like the soil, it's the living organisms in your soil.
Yeah.
You're feeding those. And if you can have healthy soil, you're going to have healthy plants and healthy people. So, and like composting, or like when you're starting to garden, you're looking at your soil first to find out what type of soil you have. Mm-hmm. If it needs amending, if it's like, I don't think I want to go right into the whole thing, but a really good rule of thumb, if you can put like a couple of inches of compost on your soil, any type of soil will benefit from that. And that'll give those nutrients for your plants throughout the gardening season. So, and it also keeps the waste out of the landfills.
Yes, yes. I was just thinking that when you said that, and I'm recollecting my daughter-in-law was very big into composting, and when they first had their first apartment, my son and his wife, I was at their house and I was, helping out, and I opened the freezer and there's all this stuff that's going to the compost because they didn't have the space to do it where they lived. They were in an apartment at the time. And so she said, but I got to make sure I get this over to them, because she couldn't have it just sitting in the house, right. She really wanted to bring it to it. So they would, every Saturday, it was in Brooklyn, they would go down to where it was a community compost thing. And people would just bring all their composting there. And it was really great. Now they live in their own home and they have their own composter. So that worked out well. But yeah, it was interesting. When I think about composting, that memory always pops up, how I was like, why do you have banana peels and scraps in your freezer? It was really funny, but she started composting, and that was important. I was so thrilled,
And I
but
wish
yeah,
more people would do that. It's
yeah.
like I've got my neighbor, she saves all her grass clippings for me. Like they were going to
Oh,
go out to the landfill. And to me, no, no, that's gold to me. I take
really? Grass?
grass clippings at the end of the gardening season. I spread it all over my garden.
Oh,
And it breaks
wow.
down over the winter and feeds the soil for the next year's growth.
See
And
that? All these things that I do not know about. I can do
yeah,
medicine, but I can't do this stuff.
and
I can if I learn. I can if I learn. But oh my goodness.
that's the thing that gardening, it can be more than just that fresh, nutritious foods too. Like it can be a great for stress relief and it's almost becomes like a meditative practice in some sense, while you're quietly tending your plants and you've got that close-up connection with nature and you can kind of let all your troubles and cares drop away.
I definitely see it as a meditative process for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I did have a garden years ago. I did. I honestly did have a garden. It wasn't a very big one, but it was fun and I loved it. That was when I was making my own jams and my own bread and all that stuff many years ago. But I would love to go back to those days now, but
Yeah.
life takes different turns and you're kind of committed to different things at certain points, but it's never too late. It's never too late to start a garden or do whatever you want to do to keep this planet a little bit healthier.
And for, the busy professionals, it's they might think, I just don't have time. I just don't have time.
Yeah.
But one question I often, when I'm working with, it's more parent coaching in that, but I ask, well, how much time do you give yourself permission
Yes.
to spend in your garden?
Yes.
Maybe it's only, 15 minutes a few times a week. That's
Yeah.
enough. You can have your little pot of herbs by the door. And then you can use that and put into your meals and liven up your dishes and then you can expand from that and have like your gardening fit into your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
If you're really, really busy and you haven't got time, you can set it up so that it's well mulched. You've got your irrigations things, so you're not spending time watering. You've got like the mulching is taking care of the weeding, and you can set yourself up. Like there's sort of three parts of the garden: the planning, the preparing, and the planting, which is like 20% of the works, but it's what's going to give you 80%, or it's 80% of the work. No, 20% of the work is going to give you 80% of the results.
Right,
And so
right.
you
I
set
understand.
yourself a weekend, to
Yeah.
plan it out and prepare it and start the planting and set it up so that you don't really have to worry about it much throughout
Yeah, yeah.
the season.
And I can see that that would work really well. My neighbor who just moved in this past winter, um, he obviously loves gardening. They just moved here and oh my goodness, he got to it into the backyard and he had tomato plants that were over 6 feet tall. And he's like, just
Wow.
boom, all of a sudden he's like, I have all these tomatoes and the squirrels are getting them. So you gotta have some. It's okay. But that which leads me to my next question. With gardening, now I really would love to have a garden again. We have so much wildlife in the backyard because we live on a pond. So we have deer, we have coyotes, we you name it, they're around. So how do you really manage when you have all these critters wanting to eat your goods?
you can have your sacrificial crops. Fencing is often
Yeah.
I feel very fortunate. In the place where I'm gardening now, it isn't that much of an issue because we've got lots of dogs in the neighborhood that are
Oh, okay.
dogs and cats to take care of the little rodents, but and there's different plants that are deterrents for different animals, but like the big thing, have a fence for keeping the deers and critters out, and but one person told me a story. Their fence actually kept the critter in.
That's funny.
Accepted it. It was I think it was a groundhog or something. It had come over and they just, what did they call it? Fat Eddie or something. And they just kind of, okay, so you've got that proportion of the garden, whatever.
Yeah. The sacrificial part of the garden. Okay, I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting because, like I said, my neighbor, he has a fence. It's all wood fence around, but the squirrels can, of course, jump up and climb over. And those were the only critters that were driving him nuts. I said, just darn squirrels. I said, well, gotta eat too, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it did.
But yeah.
Netting for the birds, like I found often if you've got fruits and stuff, but you can throw a netting over and
netting. I guess that's probably more of what it needs in certain places. But no, this is terrific. I'm learning so much from you in just a short talk about gardening, and you're getting me so inspired to find an area in my yard that I can kind of put some dirt on and do my thing. But so I know that you have do you have workshops, or what do you do to reach out to people other than your books?
Well, I've got the different courses. I've actually got
courses, right? Okay.
I've got a free course up online at the Great Discovery for it's Green Thumb Kids Unleash Your Creativity and Grow Some Garden Goodies. And I can send you the link for that.
I was going to say, we can put all those links in the show notes, okay? Like anything that you want to, offer people to, get in touch with you, any kind of courses you have. We certainly would love our audience to be able to tap into your wisdom and direction, and let's see how many new gardens we can create in the next year.
And I'm really big to have the family gardens, gardening with your kids, it can be like a terrific bonding.
Yes.
And an opportunity for that quality time, open up conversations as you're tending your little piece of earth.
Yeah.
To the bigger conversations about our earth and
yeah. That is terrific. That is terrific. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here today. And I feel privileged and honored to have you here because we know you're the expert in gardening, Grandma. No, I learn a lot. And I think this whole world needs to learn more about getting back to the way it used to be, growing your own food, knowing what you're going to feed yourself, knowing that whatever you're going to put in your mouth is going to be safe without all the added chemicals and terrible things that are in the food today. So I can only say I'm deeply grateful for you to be here today, because we got to get this word out that this is really where it's at.
Well, I appreciate it. And I'm always happy to share about gardening and growing your own food.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Professional Women's Wellness Podcast. If you would like to attend training sessions by our amazing podcast guests and have a chance to connect, join the Professional Women's Wellness newsletter. For more details and to sign up, scan the QR code or click the link in the description. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast. Each week, we will select a reviewer who will receive free access to my $197 course, Goodbye Night Bites, a 30-day journey to stop emotional eating at night. Please subscribe to get notifications of future episodes.